Hello everybody and welcome back to the multiplayer project where, I'll be honest, it took longer than anticipated to get what we want to get done. So let's just get started on this. I have no idea how long this video is going to be. It took me, what time is it? It's currently a little after 1. It took me like 4 hours to get this UI designed, but I think re-implementing it won't be so bad because I had to do a lot of trial and error with the layout of it. So first things first, I want to say we're going to be doing some coding, but it's all going to be client-side today. We are going to be working on the character creation UI, and a lot of it is going to be a placeholder that we're going to figure out what to do with at a later date. But for now, we want to be able to create a UI, and we want to make it flexible enough that we can just add in whatever, and we also want to make a command, and that will not be happening today, that we send to the server that is also similarly flexible, so that we can just add sliders or add a hair color or something like that, and it just works. Again, we're not going to be doing that part today. What we are going to do is we are going to, in the canvas, create ourselves an empty. We're going to make sure that that's above the modal window, but not inside the character select screen. And we are going to call this the character creation screen. Wonderful. Now we're going to open up the character select screen here, which is just a default Unity script right now. And let me open up the same script in my demo project here. So that's the character select screen. There we go. We're going to need a couple of things here, but we're not going to need the start or the update. We're just going to put in a region here for references. This will get expanded later on. So we're going to have a reference to the UI manager, and we're going to call that UI manager. And then that's all we need in this region. So we'll just end that region. Wonderful. We'll need one more region for right now, and this is going to be the region button events. And we'll just close that region and put in one event in here. All we need to do here is make a public void on press create character button. Got a little ahead of myself there. We don't need any parameters. And all we're going to say is when we press the create character button, we want to set the character creation screen to active, and the current screen, which is the character select screen, we want to have that not be active anymore. So let's do UI manager dot character creation screen, which does not yet exist. We'll get to that. Character creation screen dot game object dot set active false, or rather true. We want to make that true because we want the character creation screen to be active. Wonderful. Next, we will turn off the current screen, which is, of course, the character select screen. So that's simply GameObject.setActive false. Okay, so obviously this doesn't work because we don't have a character creation screen. So let's hop into the UI manager and we'll create one. We'll do it right here, and we will say public character creation screen, character creation screen. There we go. Now that exists, but there isn't a character creation screen script. So we're not getting an error here. We've just moved the error. So let's just go ahead and create ourselves a new script, and we're going to call this character creation screen. And we'll have this in the character select UI. This is kind of under the same auspices, I guess we could say. And we're just going to have this. We're going to leave this at default, but I'm actually going to get rid of this in here because if we have a start and an update, then it'll get called. And if we don't, then it won't get called. So we'll just not have it there for performance reasons. This is just going to be a purely empty script for right now. And we're going to assign that script to our character creation screen, or rather, character creation screen. There we go. We don't want character select screen. We do want to make sure that the character select screen knows about the UI manager, like that. And we also want to make sure that the UI manager knows about the character creation screen. There we go. So there's a little bit of hooking up done there. So the next thing that we're going to want to do is we are going to want to, well, Actually, let's just test this for right now. So if we pause, or rather, if we make this closed, it's going to complain that it can't connect to the server. That's fine. That's expected. We're going to create new character. Everything should just disappear. This button is a placeholder. Right, we didn't hook it up. In the Create Character button, we need to set Character Select Screen, and the function will be on-press Create Character button. Now it should work fine. Yes, I know that the connection is not there. Okay, that disappears, and it should have, yep, it turned on the character creation screen. Wonderful. So let's go ahead and turn off the character select screen. And some of the things I imported from the character select screen previously, and we're probably going to do the same thing, but we're just going to turn the character creation screen on for right now. And one thing that I did was I duplicated the character select pane. We're going to be utilizing this same pane here, although we're going to make a couple of alterations. Instead of there being a slot label, we are going to get rid of this, and we are going to put in a UI input field text mesh pro. There we go. And this is going to be positioned stretched across the top, 10 pixels in on either side. And then it'll be a height of 36, slightly taller, and then we'll set the position Y to be -26. There we go. Everything else here is reasonably okay, although I do want to change the content type here to be name. And what that ends up doing is that makes it so that every word inside of this is capitalized, as well as, like, every individual word. It allows spaces. I believe it does not allow punctuation. Let's double check that. So you can see there, I didn't capitalize that T. If I press space, I did not capitalize that A, it just does this automatically. So let's test a little bit of punctuation. Obviously spacebar works. Parentheses do not, underscore does not, comma does not. Okay. So punctuation does not work in this field, only space and numbers. Or numbers do not work, only space and letters. That's fine. So we do want to make sure that we are setting the text in this. So let's go into the text area here, and then we will grab both of these simultaneously. There we go. The font size being 14 is fine. We will set them to be centered, both horizontally and vertically, and we'll just set the placeholder to be character name. Wonderful. So that's our first step there. And then we're going to want to import our create character and delete character buttons from our character select screen. So I'm just going to duplicate those, and I'm going to place those underneath the scroll view here. And those are in the correct locations. We want to go ahead and make this interactable, and we will call this the cancel button. Wonderful. And we'll change the text here to simply read cancel. Now this will not be implemented just yet. It's going to be simply it disables this screen, re-enables this screen, and maybe does some reinitialization here if we do a little bit of nonsense within the character creator. Of course, we don't yet have a character creator, but we will get there because, and like I said, a lot of this is going to be full of placeholders, just so you know. We don't have art assets, so that's going to be interesting. But we need to go into our scroll view, and we definitely need to work on this. Now, the first thing I'm going to do in the scroll view is I'm going to double check, let's see here. I need to have the scroll view itself selected. Okay, yeah, that's all fine, I'm pretty sure. We do want to set our vertical scroll bar for this particular view to be auto hide. There we go. And that should be absolutely fine. Now we'll go into the viewport here, and then into the content, which we are actually going to rename just for purposes of keeping this a little more clear. You'll figure out why later. We want to rename this to be scroll view content, because this will get a little bit complicated, and we're going to need definitely to know what's what. So we are going to immediately delete the character slot here. Because we need to make a new type of UI element that technically the game does not have. So we're going to create a UI image here. And that's a little bit exciting. What is wrong with our scaling here? This is set to expand scale with screen size. Okay, that's interesting to be sure. So it looks like our character select screen is actually offset a little bit here. Right, that's why. We need to set the character creation screen to be stretched across the entire screen. There we go. And now we need to fix this small problem, which is the position of the character select pane, which we're going to rename to the character creation pane. There we go. And we're going to have to change all of these positions because I did not do that beforehand. That was my own fault. We're going to set this to a position of 10, and it's going to be 10, 500, 110. There we go. That fixed the problem. Wonderful. Now if we go in here, we'll see, yeah, that is working correctly. Magnificent. Okay. So, the next thing that we want to do is we want to make sure that our image here, this is currently being set up by the vertical layout group and has a height of 0. So we want to call this a collapsible element. Collapsible is apparently hard to spell. Element. And then we will call this nested, and then in parentheses, body type. Okay, so that will become clear a little bit later on, but we want to make sure that this is set up in such a way that it has a few things here. We're going to need a new script here, so we will create a C# script collapsible element. There we go. And we'll make sure to assign that. For now, we're not going to do anything with it, but we will come back to it for sure. So collapsible element is now on here, and we have our image on here. Actually, we don't need an image. Let's remove that and the canvas renderer, because this is an empty. I forgot about that. I was thinking this is an image. The image is nested one below. So we're going to put in the vertical layout group, and this is going to be padded 10, 10, 10, 10 with a spacing of 5. Upper left child alignment is fine. Child force expand on width and height is fine. We'll put in a content size fitter, and we will put this on preferred. Now note that this says parent has a type of layout group component. A child should not have a content size fitter component. We're ignoring this warning. It seems to work fine, and it doesn't work if we don't have the content size fitter. We absolutely need that content size fitter. So we're just going to pretend that that warning doesn't exist. I'm sure that this is a great thing to do. So the next thing that we're going to do is we are now going to create ourselves an image. So we're going to create a UI image inside of this. And this is going to be called the clickable object. Wonderful. Now, we are going to do a little bit of sizing with this. We're going to make the width be 300. We're going to make the height be 50. Wonderful. And now we're going to create a UI text mesh pro inside of there. And that is simply going to read, for now, body type. Wonderful. And this is going to be black, and we're going to make it size 18, and we're going to make it not centered horizontally, but centered vertically. And I do want it to be left. So just right here is absolutely perfect. I just want to move this. Actually, we want to change the anchor here a little bit. So we'll anchor it to the left side, and we'll set the X pivot point at 0. And we'll just set this to 30. There we go. So it's just indented a little bit there, but not too much. Wonderful. And we'll call this object the object label. Great. Now the next thing that we are going to need is we are going to need another UI image. And we're going to set the color of this image to be a bit darker of a gray, kind of something like this should be fine. I think the one that I had is technically slightly lighter. I'll just go with the same thing, just to make sure it's the same. 94, 94, 94, or 5e, 5e, 5e if you prefer. And this is going to be called the object content. Excellent. That's going to need a few things on it. It is going to need a vertical layout group. And this is going to be the same vertical layout group, 10, 10, 10, 10, 5. It's going to need a toggle group. Actually, this one is not going to need a toggle group. One of the later ones is going to need a toggle group. Let me just remove that in my other project. There we go. And we are going to need another content size fitter. Once again, we're going to have this warning. We don't care. We're going to set this to preferred size. You'll notice that this instantly prefers a height of 20. Well, that'll change. Okay, so we now need to do a couple of things. First off, we would need to give this some form of content, but the very first thing that I want to do is I want to go into the clickable object here, and I want to add an event trigger. And then we're going to add a new event type, pointer click. And this is going to be something that doesn't exist yet. So let's fire up the collapsible element script. We'll get rid of the default start and update methods. We do not need those. And we are going to input a couple of things. So we're going to do a region references. We'll end that region. We'll need two references. So we'll need a public game object content. And we will also need a public list of game object called layout roots. Nice. That's all the references we'll need, at least for now. And we will then do another region, and we'll call this button methods. Wonderful. And inside of this, we just need the single method, which is just public void onClick. And then inside of this is going to be pretty basic. All we'll need here is content.setActive. We'll do not content.activeSelf. So what that ends up doing is that just checks to see the current status, whether the content is active or not, and it sets it to the other one. So if it's active, if it's on, it turns it off. If it's off, it turns it on. Simple stuff. Then we're going to do for each game object layout root in layout roots. So we're going to just iterate through all of the layout roots. This isn't going to be too performance intensive. We're just going to iterate through a maximum of 3 of them. But this is just much more convenient for us. And then we're going to use this. I was unable to find the actual page on the API. On the forum, a Unity employee recommended to someone that they try utilizing this particular function. I've been unable to find any documentation for it. That said, I didn't look too hard because it works. So I don't know exactly what this ends up doing, but it's a static call to something in the UI namespace. It's some sort of deep Unity black magic. So we're going to do layout rebuilder dot force rebuild layout immediate of the rect transform casted layout root dot transform. So essentially what this seems to do is it forces it to recalculate how the vertical, horizontal, and grid layout group that is on this particular object is laid out. And we need to force it to update because it will not automatically update with what we're doing. Okay, so now that that has compiled, we will hop in here and on the clickable object, actually in the collapsible element nested, we'll make sure to set our content and our layout roots. And for the nested, that should be set to object content, which is its own object content. And then we want to set the layout roots to scroll view content, like that. Excellent. So now if we were to play this as is and turn off the object content, you should notice, first it complains about the server, we don't care. If we click this, a whole lot of nothing happens. I was expecting something to happen there. It's because we didn't set it up. So we'll set it on the collapsible object or the collapsible element there, and then we'll grab collapsible element dot on click. Now it'll work. Okay, so you can see that put that in, and it just collapses it and puts it away. Wonderful. Okay, so let's go ahead and set our width on this to be 440. And our height we are going to set to be, at least by default, 165. So that'll make it a little bit better. Yeah, you can see it changes the height because it's the preferred height, but this is the width that we're going for. So that is perfect. Now, we are essentially going to duplicate this, but we're going to put this inside of the object content. That's the collapsible element nested that we were talking about there. And we are going to call this masculine element. Wonderful. Now what all needs to be changed here? Well, not a whole lot. Our object content is correct. We do want to refresh the scroll view content, but we also want to refresh the object content that we are inside of, as well as the collapsible element nested body type. So we want to refresh all of those when we click on the masculine element. And we will rename this from body type to masculine. Excellent. And then inside of the content here, we are going to simply have a couple of UI elements, and those are going to be toggles. There we go. That took it a moment to go on there. And we'll call this slim toggle. This label, we're going to remove the text off of this, and we're going to put on a Text Mesh Pro text in the UI. There we go. And let me just pull that open just to make sure. Okay, so this is stretched. We want this to be 30 pixels in. We want this to be 0 from the top. From the right, -275. From the bottom, 0. Everything else here is good. We'll have the text read slim, masculine, in parentheses there. Size 18 will be good. And let's see here. Why do we have no TMP font asset? What just happened? Okay, I guess our TMP font asset isn't exactly working. I believe we can go to Window, Text Mesh Pro, import TMP Essential Resources. All assets are already there. This should be on Liberation Sans SDF, like this. But for whatever reason, maybe because the object is disabled? Okay, yeah, it's because the object was disabled. That's fine. So we want this to be on the Liberation Sans SDF material, and we probably want to do this with every Text Mesh Pro that we have in here, if they're not already there. Most of them are already on Liberation Sans, I believe, so that's fine. So we want to set our object content here to be only a width of 410, I believe. Let me double check that. Yes, 410 is correct. Position X on the object content here should be at a position X of 10, but that's with a pivot of 0 and 1. Okay, so we have those that object content set up. We're going to have a total of 3 toggles inside of this, and you can see that that's kind of wacky with when it refreshes that, and that's why we are going to be doing that manually. So we're going to have this set to average toggle as well as strong toggle. And I suppose we could have like a, I don't know what you call it, a heavy toggle, but for now we're just going to have the 3 body types, I think. Abrogate, apparently. And then we'll have strong. Okay, so there's our masculine setup. And if we disable this object content, you can see it does that. which is slightly awkward. We're then going to duplicate this, and this is going to be the feminine element, and we will change its label to be feminine. Wonderful. And then we will change all of these labels inside of here from masculine to feminine. Feminine. There we go. Just going to copy that. And we'll paste that in. Wonderful. Okay. So it was this expansion that caused me a lot of grief, by the way. We'll just disable that for right now. And then we're going to duplicate the collapsible element nested. But this is not going to be a nested. This is now going to be a toggle. And this is of the type head. Excellent. So that should be this section done. We're not going to do anything with this toggle just yet because I want to test this and see if I messed anything up. So we open this, and you notice that it immediately reformats this so that this one is down below. It opens this up. If we open these, it does the same. Very nice. This is all working exactly as expected. But you notice that this doesn't reset. If you close it, it leaves it as it is, which I think that's fine. I think having that reset is not necessarily what we want. Now, this one also being the same thing is definitely not what we want. So let's go ahead and implement this particular collapsible element toggle. And this will be the head toggle. Let me just close out of the nested toggle in the other one. And the head toggle here is going to be mostly the same in this. Like, the collapsible element here is the same. The vertical layout group is exactly the same. All we need to do is we need to go into the object content here. And that is going to have, instead of a vertical layout group, that is going to have a grid layout group. I'll go ahead and put that above the content size fitter just to remain consistent. If I can. There we go. And we're also going to have this have a toggle group. And we'll put that just up here. Excellent. We will not allow it to switch off. We will have our padding in the grid layout group be 10, 10, 10, 10. These cell sizes are absolutely fine. All of this is actually absolutely fine. And then we will get rid of these elements here. And instead, in the object content, we're just going to put in a UI toggle, which is here. We're going to change this from a text to a text mesh pro. And yeah, that did that same none TMP font asset. We'll do that just so that we can update this. And it looks like it automatically updated it. Okay. So it's just when we add it disabled. That's completely fine. So we do want to change the label here, and we want to change this from body type to head type. Wonderful. And then this is going to be full of placeholders. At least for now. So this toggle here is going to be labeled just simply head toggle. Wonderful. This is going to be a font size of 18. I'm wondering where exactly this is located. Looks like this is a little bit off. We want this to be stretched over the size of the actual toggle here. And I'm just wondering... where exactly the text is. That's exciting. We'll have it be centered. It should show up on this. That's odd. Oh, hi, Blitz. Yeah, I don't want to install a new version of you right now. You can go away. Oh, is that it? Just very tiny? That's it. It's just very tiny. Why is it so tiny? Okay, that's some exciting stuff. This is not something that I ran into previously. Let's see. This is set to stretch, 0.5. The scale is all normal. Okay. What did I do here? That is a good question. How have I messed this up? I'm just checking my source project where it works perfectly fine. Is it to do with this mesh renderer? I bet it is. We need to remove this mesh renderer. Oh, this is because it's Text Mesh Pro text. Of course. This needs to be Text Mesh Pro text UI. There we go. That would help. Size 18. We're going to position this 0000 stretched across, and we are going to set this centered like so. Okay, wonderful. Now we'll just duplicate this a bunch of times. These are just placeholders. And you can see it fills in just like that. So all we need to do if we add more options is add it in right here. Wonderful. So for right now, actually I want to start the game with this disabled. So we will turn off the object content for head type. Now let's just test this real quick so you can see. And actually, we should only have one on here. These need to be set to the correct toggle group. So let's select all of these and set the group to the object content toggle group, which we added a little bit ago. Perfect. So now, in theory, if we open this up, only one of them is selected, and it's that one by default, but we can set it to whatever one we want by default, and we can just choose just by clicking, not necessarily on the checkbox, but anywhere within the cell. And this will probably, the label will probably for a lot of these be replaced with an image later on, once we actually have an image to put in there. So that's our collapsible element toggle done for right now. So we are going to duplicate that, and we are going to call this collapsible element sliders. This is going to be body. There we go. Wonderful. And we are going to label this the body options. Wonderful. And then inside of here, the object content is actually going to be going back to a vertical layout group. So let me just pull that up so that I have my reference on my other monitor. There we go. We will remove the grid layout group and, well, yeah, we'll remove the toggle group as well. We can always put it back in if it's necessary. There will actually be a toggle in this, but for right now, we're just going to put in a vertical layout group. We'll place that right there. Once again, 10, 10, 10, 10, 5. Wonderful. Now, we're not going to have all of these toggles. We're going to delete all but one, and we're going to leave this toggle. And we will call the label here toggle option. Excellent. And I do want to change the actual size of this back to its defaults. 160, 20, and this should be driven by the vertical layout group. Yeah, there we go. So that's toggle option there. Let me just turn off the head options on my on my reference project and turn on the options here. And actually, I called it checkbox option previously, but this is fine. Now we're going to create ourselves an empty here, and this is going to be called the labeled slider. Wonderful. Now this labeled slider is going to have a height of 40, and a width of 100 is absolutely fine. And then we're going to create a UI slider here, and we're going to make this slider be a little bit fancy. So we're going to have this set to top left. That is absolutely fine. Position X of 0, except we need to set our pivot to 0 and 1. So position X of 0, position Y of 0. Our width is going to be 320, and our height is going to remain at 20. Excellent. Now inside of the slider, or actually, we can place this outside. I placed it inside before, but technically it's probably slightly better if we leave that alone and create it here. So UI, and we're going to do text Mesh Pro. This is going to be in a centered position that is fine. Position X of 110, position Y of -10, and we're going to leave the rest of this the same. We're going to call this slider option, and we're going to set the font size here to 18, and that is going to be positioned centered in the box like that. Wonderful. Now there's one more thing that I want to do here, and that is that I want to put in an input field. And we are going to do a UI input field text mesh pro right here. And this is going to be at a right anchor, like so. Position 275. We're going to do a position Y of 10, so that it's centered on this line. And then a width of only 65. We don't need very much width, and this height is absolutely fine. Wonderful. And then we are going to do a couple of things here. I don't think we do anything with the image. In the field here, we're going to do a content type decimal number. There we go. The text is going to be initially 0. We are going to modify this text a little bit here. And I'm just checking to see if there's anything else we need to change here. I don't think so, but we do need to go into the text area placeholder here. And I'm just going to set this to 0 as well. Not that that is actually going to do anything. The placeholder is never really going to be used. And the text here, I want to make sure is centered. Like so. And we might as well do the same for the placeholder and non-italicize it. I guess that's fine. Okay. So, now we need to set ourselves up another script. And this is going to be the labeled slider. Wonderful. Now that didn't open, so we're going to open it. There we go. And we're going to need a couple of things here. We're going to need to be using Unity Engine.ui for sure. We're going to need to get rid of our start and update. We're just going to be using this for events, so there will be absolutely no automatically called things there. We'll do a region references. And we'll end that region, and inside of that region, we will need a reference to the public slider, like that, and the public tmpro.tm input field. There we go, input field. Okay, so that's all the references we'll need, at least for now, and region value change events. We'll end that region. Wonderful. And then in here, we are just going to do 2 events. Public void on slider value changed. Or I'll just do change, since that's what I did previously. We're going to do input field, input field dot text equals slider.value.toString. That's going to be 0.00. Wonderful. Next, we are going to do something like this. Public void on field end edit. So, we need to do something a little bit more fancy here. The user can only put in numbers or decimals into the field, right? And I believe you can only put in a decimal once. But we need to do a try parse, and I didn't actually do that before, and I actually need to look it up. Exactly how that syntax works. How you do the catch, more specifically. Is that just in a regular try catch, or is that... it just... Right. You know what? We're just going to do a try catch. So we're just going to do try catch exception E. Wonderful. I believe we'll have to use system for exception. Yeah, that's fine. So if there's an exception here, we know it's going to be a problem with the parsing, right? So if that's the case, then slider.value equals 0. And actually, we don't even need to take in the exception. We can just do a catch. If there's anything that happens, which means that we don't need to use system, if there's anything that happens here whatsoever, we'll just default the value to 0. Otherwise, we will say slider.value equals float.parse input field .text. Wonderful. So we'll go hook all that up. So the labeled slider here needs to have the labeled slider, and we need to know what the slider is, as well as what the input field is. Glorious. Then the slider needs to have the onValue change added in. So labeled slider goes here, And then that would be the on slider value change. And then input field here on end edit gets the labeled slider with the function being on field end edit. Wonderful. So I want to test if we can have multiple decimals. We cannot. Okay, so if we put this in at, say, 10. Oh, of course, we need to change the slider here. I want the slider to be set to a max value of 100. Just by default. We can always set that to whatever we want. Okay, so as we move the slider, we should see the text field changes to display what that actually is. But say we have it at 74.89 like this, but we want it to be at 50. 50, enter, bam, it's at 50. Glorious. And you'll also notice that it changes it, which updates this to what it was changed to. That's nice. But because we didn't actually edit this, it doesn't go into a loop. In theory. I say as it's in a loop. That is exciting. Oh no, it's not in a loop. It just wasn't letting me change it. We change it to 50. Okay, so there's a hitbox issue here. In some way. And I think it has to do with this slider option, the label here. Let's go ahead and turn off the text raycast. And that should solve it, because I was trying to click in this region and it wasn't working. And that should be because of that overlap. Yep. Do everything else exactly the same? Yeah, it works fine. Was not in a loop at all. It was just that raycast. Okay. So that gets us our placeholders for body options. We can put whatever options we want in here. And we are just going to duplicate this again. And this is going to be our face options. So we'll just... Honestly, we're going to leave this almost entirely the same. This is going to be face. There we go. And I was planning to put a color selector in this episode, but I kind of ran out of time. So a color selector is something that we will actually add to our to-dos list, which I will do right now. Color selector UI. For... Selector spelled with an E? No, it is not. Color selector UI for character creation. Okay. That's something that we will eventually need, but this is going to be for the face, and we are just going to change this from body options to face options. Wonderful. In the body options, we definitely want to make sure that our object content is turned off. And our face options are going to be basically the same thing in terms of placeholder. So we're just going to turn off the object content there as well. Excellent. And then we're just going to duplicate the head options here. And we are going to call this, instead of head, hair. Glorious. And then in the object content, this is all fine. We're going to open up all of these, though, and rename these from the head toggle to hair toggle. Okay, so that's going to be hair toggle. Wonderful. Now I'll go through the very tedious process of closing all of these. There we go. And we'll turn off the object content. That should not be on by default. And that, right there, that's our character creation pane completely done. Although, the create character and cancel buttons should not be inside of the pane. We'll just put them outside over here. And we'll get rid of that one. And change that order slightly. Okay, so let's go ahead and test this. This should work completely fine. So our character name would be whatever we'd want it to be. Our body type, we could choose whatever we wanted. Oh, we've not toggle grouped these. Hang on a moment. That's something that I forgot to do. We need to toggle group those. That'll be in the character creation pane, scroll view, viewport, scroll view content, collapsible element nested, and then these are going to need to have a toggle group on both of them. Not a toggle group. I'm going to undo that. Toggle group. Perfect. And then the toggles that are inside of their object contents, which I'll just go ahead and minimize for ease of doing this, should be set to a toggle group on the element itself. Like that. So you can only select one of them. There we go. Okay, so let's look at this. Excellent. So you can select whatever body type you want. Now, technically, these should all be in the same toggle group, shouldn't they? Now that I think about it, it doesn't make sense to be able to choose both a masculine and a feminine body type. So we'll remove that because ultimately that's not how the mesh is going to be able to work. That's just not technically feasible. So we're going to put the toggle group actually in the collapsible element nested instead. And then we will set all of these guys to have their group be the same toggle group. So that now you can only select one body type. When it updated, it automatically chose slim feminine for whatever reason, but there we go. Now we can only choose one body type, and if we want to add more body types in later, it's just a matter of duplicating and changing the label. And also, you'll notice because we implemented this within the scroll rect, if we open all of these up, all of a sudden, we can scroll. Isn't that nice? I like it. So our character preview would happen here. We'd have something going on in the background that would be, you know, all pretty and stuff. And yeah, this all works magnificently. Like I said, it took me way longer than I care to admit to get this to work. But, I mean, it took me almost another hour to re-implement it, which is kind of a lot. Now, I'm wondering... Ah, the scroll wheel is not working when we're over the clickable object. That's interesting. I'll add that to the to-dos as something to fix. Make scroll wheel in character creation pane work properly while mousing over a clickable object. Okay. We'll add that to the to-dos. That's a pretty minor thing, but overall, we'll say that this is quite good for a start. So next episode, we are going to design a communication system that is flexible enough to be able to send this information, and only the information necessary, but also expandable without a huge amount of effort on our part to go back and rewrite everything if we want to, say, add another hair type, which, by the way, head type here should probably be relabeled to just simply hair. Excellent. So yeah, we're going to be adding in a color element to this at some point. We're going to be adding in multiple options. People are going to be able to do a lot of different things, and I don't want to have to completely re-architecture everything if we end up in a situation where we want to add more assets. So we're going to create a system where we can flexibly tell the server what information it needs to know. Because this is one of those situations where we're going to want that flexibility later on. But that is a job for another episode. You can leave your offerings to the engagement gods in the force, I almost said, but it's in the forms of likes, comments, subscribes, and bell ringings, and I will see you all next time.